I will get into a state after a period of time where the shapes will change and I see geometric shapes.
Obviously, we're here to talk about your life.
When I left radio, it was 20 years. After that, I lost identity, and that eventually started to spiral down negatively. And, small things like sleep patterns changed, diet changed, alcohol consumption increased. And I was like, I'm definitely sliding into depression. I've never spoken about it. I've never told anybody because everybody will think I'm insane.
What meditation do you do?
All of them.
How did you do that?
Got to get it done, like you say.
Yeah.
You got to get it done. When people interview me like this, it's never what they expect.
So last time I saw you, Merrick, was 12 years ago. And as I just mentioned to you, you're a lot slimmer.
Yeah. I was Fat Mez then, as it's sometimes affectionately referred to by others. I remember Fat Mez, and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty cool with it. But I probably weighed, 12 years ago, I probably would have weighed close to 100 kilos.
Really?
Yeah, and comparatively now I probably weigh about 84 kilos. So significantly less.
But do you remember this? So when I was doing research for this interview, I was like, what was that thing that we worked on together? Do you have memory of this?
12 years ago.
Okay, David Jones. Something to do with David Jones. I flew up. I was working at the radio station, but in activation. And they said...
It's for Maya.
Maya.
Yeah,
that's right. And
yep.
so I flew up to Sydney. I don't know, but you're trying on a lot of clothes. There wasn't, I swear, I would remember, I didn't go... He's a bit overweight.
Was one of those clothes, was it a Duna cover? Because I probably would have been able to wear a Duna cover then. Yeah, no, that was something I was doing.
I remember what the
I was doing something for Triple M. It was for Triple M and Maya.
Yeah.
And it was a campaign for when I was working at Triple M then, and I did a campaign. But that's probably when I was probably close to my heaviest, I reckon.
Oh.
And it was just, you know what it was? I was like a relatively new dad. I would have just had my second child then, and I was just doing that thing that a lot of parents do where you just go, I'm going to eat everything the kids don't eat.
Yes,
so if they don't eat that, I'll eat the rest of it. And I was just basically like a walking Labrador, and which Labradors are also a walking animal. But anyway, whatever. I was like a human Labrador, and it was like a boiling the frog thing. I didn't realise I was putting on weight, and then all of a sudden I blew out to about 100 kilos.
Really?
Yeah, and then I was like, I reckon I should probably get fit.
Yeah. So tell me, it might have been longer than 12 years ago because I don't think I had kids then, and my eldest is 12. Yeah, so I probably did not, and I definitely wasn't pregnant when I did that campaign with you. God, that's a long time ago.
Feels like centuries ago.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because, I use like little way markers as, for memory recall, right?
Yeah.
Good and bad. So you remember a lot of your past through significant events or epochs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So obviously kids and stuff like that. That's how I'm able to go,
yes.
Oh, that's right. They're all, places that I worked or events. But one of the, I think these indicators for a lot of people is Fat Mez versus Fit Mez. So that's cool. That's cool.
That's so funny. And I can't remember exactly what we spoke about. Do you have, and tell me if you actually have any memory of this. And I think I remember it more because I have all the photos still on my phone from way back when. I don't know why.
Oh, that makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
And I remember we were walking either to get lunch or whatever, because I think I was there for 2 days and you were giving me this advice. It was work advice.
Oh, God, please,
I can't remember exactly what you said.
Oh.
Maybe I wanted to move.
Well, it must have been impactful then, if you can't remember it.
I remember thinking you were very nice and you did give me advice. What it was about, I don't know. I don't even know the situation. Like, I feel like maybe I was like ready to move on to, maybe it was even producing or something like that.
Yeah, I do actually.
Step.
Yeah,
do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember giving you advice on how to pivot in what you're doing, because I remember you talking about, this is very, very vague. So I'm taking, fractured elements of my own memory. But I remember talking to you about you wanting to pivot from one section of radio into a different section, which was about content and moving to content. And we were talking about how to move and being able to transition and have your peers understand that you were moving into content, which is what you're doing.
Jeez, isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. I can't believe I remember that.
I can't believe you remember that. And that was actually very different to what I'm doing now, because that was then I was a producer.
Yep.
I went through like all these evolutions.
Yep.
So, like, I don't think you've seen Sarah 2.0.
No. Wow.
Welcome.
And it's great.
Welcome.
It's great. You're doing great.
Thank
The podcast
you.
is great. I've listened to what you do. You listen attentively to your guests. You ask really good and engaging questions, and you have interesting people on. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. So obviously we're here to talk about your life and a bit about, your learnings. But I wanted to start at the beginning because you grew up Eltham, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
You don't live here anymore. You obviously live in Sydney. No. But how were those younger years?
Oh, look, quite mixed. I had a very happy childhood as a kid growing up in Eltham because we had a wonderful house, which we still have in Eltham, and leafy green suburb, lots of outdoors. Had plenty of room for dogs and cats and everything else, and it was great. But my childhood was a little bit inconsistent. And my relationship with my father was quite inconsistent. So I had the early years of my life, if you look at any photos of me as a kid, I was always very, very happy, and I was always known as being, a bit of a tearaway. I always had a lot of energy, even when I was like a minor. But then as a child, I had a fractured relationship with my father, and a very difficult relationship. And so I had a period there where I was always a happy kid, but I was also too, there was a lot of unhappiness in my life as a child as well. And particularly through, the period up until I was about probably 16 to 18. And then I started to form a good relationship with my father, and that carried on until his death about 15 years ago.
Why was it fractured between you and him?
I think, looking back on it, it's a confluence of different reasons. I think his own childhood was very, very difficult and very, very fractured. And his understanding of relationships in general was very old school. He went to a private school. His father was off fighting the war, so he was with his mother and his brother for periods whilst my grandfather was fighting in the war. So for long periods there, he was fatherless in some respects. And I think that he came from a very, very different generation, and his father was very much of a different generation. And there's been a real lag between the generations on how to relate to children, how to relate to women, and just very old school in a different way. So my father, I think, didn't really know how to handle a child like me as well, but I don't think anybody did.
What were you like?
Oh, pretty crazy, like a lot of energy. Really, really hyperactive as a child. As my grandfather used to say, you're either going to or coming from. And when he said that, he meant that I was either going to or coming from trouble. I was always in trouble.
God bless.
Yeah. So, I was just always doing things, just always kind of active, mobile, very curious. And my dad had a certain way of doing things, and he had a fractured relationship with my mum. They ended up divorcing when I was about 18. But I think a lot of the problems that I had with my father was just that we just didn't have a connection. And then later on in life, we formed a connection.
How were you able to form that connection later in life?
I think that when I became more curious and more involved in his interests, when there was a commonality in interests, that's when we started to form a relationship. When I became more interested in things that interested him, then we started to bond. So as a kid, my dad would come and watch me play football, but he didn't really care about footy. And so he would be one of those dads that would come to the footy, but he didn't love watching me play footy. So I loved, now it's the other way around. Like I love footy, but my son, and I coached my son's footy team for a while, but my son doesn't really care about footy. So I just kind of accept that. I've been on both sides of the coin there. But particularly when I took a strong interest in two facets. Number one, we shared a common interest in war and war history because obviously my grandfather was in 2 world wars.
Wow.
And he was in the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. He served in all 3 services. So he had quite a history there. So my dad was intrigued by that, and I think that sparked an interest from really very, very young. I think I just naturally gravitated towards the military and military history. So that's part of it. And the other one was comedy. My dad was a massive, massive fan of comedy. He
Really?
he loved it. He loved it. And we had a really bonding moment when I was probably about 15. I reckon this was the first time we ever did something that we both kind of connected. And it was a comedian, a guy called Mort Sahl. Have you heard of Mort Sahl?
No.
Mort Sahl is a very famous American comedian, a very intelligent man, a brilliant comedian. And he came to tour Australia, and my dad bought 2 tickets because he was a huge fan. And he bought a ticket for my mum, and my mum's just going, I don't want to go and see Mort Sahl. And my dad had no friends to go with. And so I was like the last backstop, and I knew it. So I went with my dad to go with my dad. And I remember seeing this comedian. I didn't understand any of the material. It was, very, very New York. A lot of it was political. A lot of it was based around, New York Jewish humour.
Yeah.
It was really very specific, and I had no idea. But I loved the delivery. I loved the timing. I loved the presence, and I loved the thinking around it, and that sparked it. And then after that, my dad and I started to share common interests.
Really? And then did you go to comedy acts together?
So, no, not so much. But like my dad, I started doing stand-up when I was 20, and I told my family that I wanted to look at doing comedy when I was about 19 or 20. And both my parents, all my family, my entire family was like, yeah, 100%. You should definitely be doing that. There's no like, I think because they realised, Sarah, that I was absolutely appalling at everything else. And they go, there is no hope for you, so you may as well give that a crack. So that's when I went and started doing stand-up. And then, so once I started doing comedy, my dad and I just absolutely bonded. And he moved from being, a figure that I had a degree of fear of, and a figure that I had, reticence to be around, to being a confidant and a mentor. And so it was, I always often say that the first half of my life I spent hating my dad, and the second half of my life with him, I spent adoring him.
Yeah. Was he abusive when you were young?
No, never. He was never violent. He was not abusive at all. It's just.
What did you fear about him?
Probably disapproval.
Yeah.
That's an old saying about comedians. Show me a comedian, I'll show somebody with a fractured relationship with their father, or broken, with daddy issues, or some sort of problems with their father, because it does have that impact. But I think that it was just, I found when I was a kid, I couldn't do anything to impress him. And I was good at stuff, but even, I would have to excel at something for my dad to recognise it. So when I was 14, I became state champion, Victorian champion in my division for Taekwondo. I was a black belt.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first moment I ever saw my father proud of me. But I had to literally fight my way for that approval, and go through what was agonising injury, and to get through the rounds to eventually get the gold medal. And that was the first time I ever saw my father proud of me.
Isn't it funny how parenting has changed so much from that era to now? I feel like now every 5 seconds I'm telling my kids, oh, you're amazing, and I can't believe you did that. Wow, you are the best.
Oh, if I only had more ribbons to give you.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like we've done this complete turnaround.
Yep.
It's just a funny thing how parenting goes back and forward like that.
Do you think we've overcompensated? This is often the way,
I think,
we're in
yes.
overcompensation mode, and we might actually come back and find a little bit of, evenness, because it does. I agree. We've wrapped our children up in cotton wool.
Yeah.
We are so worried about them having a negative experience that we don't allow them to have negative experiences. So therefore, they don't have the learnings of negative experience. So therefore, they have no resilience.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And I feel like I'm not one of those people that thinks it's a good thing that every single participant wins as such. There's a first place, a second place, a third place, and then everyone else doesn't get a medal or whatever it is. And my girlfriend was telling me the other day, she goes, oh my God, how's this? My daughter got an award for making the awards.
That's
She's like, that is so pathetic,
Yeah.
And to your point, resilience is born and bred through us not winning,
Yeah.
us falling down, not getting to where we want. And that's how we become stronger in life. So when big things do happen when we get older, which inevitably will, because that's life, we are able to be resilient towards them because we've had those little amounts of negative, things happen to us when we were young.
But also, too, I reckon the best part about winning is the losing before it.
Yeah.
If you've just won, you roll up to your first race, your first competition of any kind, and you just win it all the time, you've got no frame of reference. If you've had heaps of losses, then you win, that win feels so much more significant. So if we get them in a position where they've got varying degrees of success and they don't have failure, then we're robbing them of a frame of reference. It's like I look at all of the achievements that I personally think are good for me. People I think externally might see my success or my achievements as something, but me personally, I see them as they're a bit more varied. I place greater weight on other achievements, and all of my great achievements have come from punishing results before it. Really very hard things, and I often find that usually, like, physical or mental injury and the punishment of getting through that has led me to success. And I look back at everything and I always think, before I had success, I copped it something severe, like really brutal stuff. And so, I finished high school, I finished year 12, and I went pretty much straight into the workforce and got into comedy very quickly. But before that, I failed year 11 and had to repeat year 11, which was humiliating. My mother was a professional educator and she used to teach at my school. So it was compounded. My mother was an educator at that school with a record there and a history there, and her son had failed year 11, even though everybody said he's intelligent, he's just not right in the head. That's it. I had teachers tell me I was not right in the head.
I mean, what does that even mean? Isn't it more like you just weren't applying yourself?
It's undiagnosed ADHD. That's what that is. So I presume, I don't know, I'm not diagnosed. But so I had to repeat year 11, and then at the end of year 11, I was expelled.
What?
Even though I passed year 11, because I was just a dickhead.
What did you do?
I did something which I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
And it was a victimless crime. And then they just said, it was one of my very first stand-up jokes, but essentially what I did is went into a building at Eltham High. It was a 2-story block of the English wing, and there was a group of parents walking past on parent orientation day at the end of the year. So I'd pretty much finished the year. So my second year of year 11, I'm home and hosed. It's done. The marks are through. I'm good to go. And there was no teacher in our classroom. And I looked out the window and I could see the discipline coordinator, the principal, the year level coordinators all walking with a group of parents for parent orientation day for Eltham High. And I climbed out of the window.
Oh, God.
And I wrapped my arm around the ledge of the window and hung outside of the window by one arm. And then I yelled out, "No, Mrs. Norton, you can't make me jump." And they just went, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah." I actually said, all I want to do is learn. And as a joke, I thought it was the funniest thing. All my mates are inside just going, "Oh, you've outdone yourself. This is class. This is A grade." And the school just went, "You can't do that."
Oh, my God.
So they turfed me. So I went to another school and I had to restart again. So I was somebody who's repeated, and then I was expelled. So that was hardship. And then, 2 years later, I'm living the dream. So everything, I look at all of the achievements that I value, and the ones that I value have always come from bitter pain and sacrifice.
I agree. I feel like my own life has mirrored your sentiment. I wonder, though, was your mum upset? Because she worked at that school.
I was shamed because I felt like I'd let my mum down.
Yeah.
I was more shamed for my mum than I was for me in the end. At the start, I was shamed because I had to repeat. And I felt like I was worthy enough, in a level of intelligence that I should have been put up. But because of behavioural standards and bad marks, that wasn't the case. But I felt shamed for my mum because she was an educator and she was respected. So that was bad. But I think my parents too were just sort of like, really, what's he going to do anyway? I don't think people had very high hopes for me at that age.
And tell me you...
Except for me, I had high hopes, but that's because I was deluded.
Tell me you had a good relationship with your mum growing up, didn't you?
Yeah, very good with my mum. Until the end, I was very, very close to my mum. And she was very good for me. Mum, I think, instilled lots of good values in me.
Like
Love of women. Like to my mum had a great piece of advice, and it's stuck with me all my life, and I repeat it all the time. But she said, never trust a man who doesn't like women. She said, they're not right. Watch them. And it was a great piece of advice. And as I grew up with that, I'd watch the way men would treat women, and if they're purely objectified as some sort of sexual device, or they were put down or they were ignored, I would look at men who didn't have female friends, and I would never gravitate to them. I like the company of men. I like to hang out with my mates. I like footy, and I like all of those things. But it's very much balanced by the company of women. I love being in the company of women. I'm comfortable being one-on-one with a woman having a conversation. I'm comfortable being in a room entirely filled with women. It makes no difference to me. But I do have a sense of discomfort being around men who I know don't like women. I won't be around men who don't like women.
I find it very odd when either sex doesn't like the other sex.
Correct.
Like I interviewed a lady once, and she made some derogatory comments about men, and she had sons, and she's married. And I thought, this is bizarro land.
It's a bit weird.
It's weird. Like, I find that strange. I mean, I can understand if people don't like certain individuals, regardless of their sex, okay? Not all of us like everyone, and, but not to like a whole sex, like that to me does not make sense.
Yeah,
and I wonder, you have to dig up far in their upbringing and background, because that is so strange. Like I grew up with a brother and a mother and a father, and I have a lot of male friends. I always had, I think there was one stage where I like hanging around males more, but now obviously I have more girlfriends, but I still have my male friends, and I don't really look upon them being any different. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like they're just humans.
Yeah, and I think if an individual doesn't like another gender of any kind, of any description, then you just go, that's something inside you. That's a problem with you.
Yeah.
It's odd, but I think that I came from a family where my dad was just a misogynist. He would never have harmed my mother. He was not physical, and he wasn't abusive in any way. But he was just an old school misogynist. And that's what he learned, because he didn't have good examples in his childhood, and also to that era, and also to my grandfather came out of an era where, he'd served in the First World War as a teenager. And so I think, and his ideals were very skewed towards men are this, women are that. And, talking about a time when men would drink in a different part of a hotel to women. It's insane. So I think what I took from my mum was the strength to not have that, not be a misogynist, not do it. Nobody's perfect, and I'm certainly not perfect at anything, but the thing that I take great pride in from my, that I've inherited from my mother is just an appreciation of women.
Yeah.
And enjoyment. I like to be around women, whereas my father was never comfortable. He would never have liked to have been in a room full of women. It would have made him uncomfortable.
What else did your mum teach you?
Good work ethic. Not to be judgmental of people regardless of their socioeconomics. Huge thing. My mother grew up in Broken Hill. She came from a very poor family, a mining family, and her family had nothing. But when I was a kid, we would go and stay with my grandfather, and we would see our relatives, and they lived in houses that were made out of tin. But as a child, I never saw the difference between them and anyone else. I just thought the houses were Broken Hill houses. I just thought that was
the style. Yeah.
And what I realised is that these people who had very little gave the most. The most generous people I knew were the poorest people I knew. So she taught me that the value of people over money.
That's a beautiful thing to instill in someone.
Yeah, I think I didn't realise that until I was an adult because I just saw them as family and friends. But now I realise that there was a huge divide in those socioeconomics between the lifestyle that I was afforded through my father and mother working and what these people had, accumulatively, even though they worked harder. They were hard-working people in a hard town and a hard time. So that, I think it's very difficult to, my brother's got an incredible work ethic as well. I think it's very difficult to come from a family that has got that background and not look at hard work as a basic standard.
Yeah, I agree. That's my father also is a very hard worker, and like my brother and I were brought up like that too, and it's just second nature. Like even I reflect on this a bit. So once, if my brother and I started something, so say it was like an extracurricular activity or whatever, like we just had to do it. We couldn't pull out, and unless we were on the deathbed, we had to go to school. Like there was no like, no, I don't feel like going.
Yeah.
But it's, you know what? It's in life, if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it.
Yeah.
As in like, okay, I've got this on. There's no question. I'm coming. I've said yes. And I find it weird when people are flaky. Like even if it was an arrangement, if we made an arrangement, Merrick, unless something shocking happened, I would be there because I told you I could come.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you like reflect on that as an adult, what you learned from your youth. It was just like, okay, you said yes, you got to go. You said yes to school, you've got to go. And it's great to have parents that, I mean, they weren't strict, but that was just the thing that we learned. You got to rock up on time and you got to be there.
Do you instill that in your children?
Yes, but they're a little bit more soft, and I do let them get out of more stuff than I was ever allowed. But at the same time, no, I am very much like, you signed up for this.
Yep.
And even though you're questioning it, we're doing it for a whole year, and we'll see at the end of the year how you go.
When you said for a year, what have you got them signed up to? Like a sport
say
or
a sport or something like
yep.
that. Like my daughter was questioning something that she's been doing for a while, but she started questioning it, a few weeks into term one. And I'm like, no, we've signed up for a year now. Yep. See how you go.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, then we'll, if you don't want to do it, sure.
Yep.
But you got to see the year out.
Yeah, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Like that leads
because
back to
also
what
you change
before.
your mind. Sometimes you start enjoying something.
Yeah. And particularly if you start to get good at something. A lot of the reason people quit either because it's too hard or because they're not good at it. And both
100%.
of those things are based in fear.
Yeah.
So if you remove the fear, if you don't give it time, but somebody could excel. They might have a really crappy first 6 months or something, and then they'll excel at it later on. That's why you got to keep going.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I think of Michael Jordan also in this. Obviously, he's an extreme case, but when my son was first doing sport, he was like, okay, he was very good at soccer. And I was like, he's not amazing at basketball, but everyone's doing basketball. And, here we are, how many years later, he's 12 and he got MVP last week for his team.
Did you just create this podcast so that you could brag about that? Because that's a pretty good brag. It's a pretty good brag.
But it just shows
it's in your notes.
He wasn't...
Make sure I mention the MVP thing. I can see it on your notes. I'll get him around until I get to the point.
Whatever we talk about, I just got to mention it. But it's interesting how, had I just been like, he doesn't like it and given up 3 years or 4 years ago, to your point, you just don't know where they'll go.
Well, that's the thing is the other thing, you never know how close you are to the finish line until you've crossed it.
Yeah.
And so many people, I've seen this in so many different ways, often physically, people will quit just before they're at the finish line because that mentally they don't know where it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people give up when success is just on the other side of the hill. And they just can't push themselves that bit further. And they go, but I did push myself that bit further. And you go, well, obviously you didn't. You need to keep pushing and keep pushing through. And I think that comes back to work ethic, and it comes back to your psychology, whether or not you've got the determination and the resilience. And that's what it is. It's a combination of determination to get it done and resilience to suffer through it.
Suffer. There is a lot of suffering that goes on.
Suffering's very underestimated.
Yeah.
I know it's an awful thing and there's such a negative aspect. And, I don't like to see people put in a position where they're suffering, but I think putting yourself in a position of suffering is very different. So nobody likes to see human suffering, but suffering gets you results.
I think also, because I've obviously human nature, and talking about human nature is, pretty much what I do. And it makes me analyse situations a lot, and I think deeply about them. And I've really started thinking about, I've had a few people that have lost people in their lives, like in the last couple of weeks. And I look at the suffering that occurs with loss, right? And it's horrendous, especially if it's very quick, which in both these instances it was. And I see how some people really suffer a lot more than others. And I think about, obviously it's a personal thing, but why is someone suffering greater, and what allows someone to move on whilst some people never do? And I know it's obviously situational, dependent on, who passes and all that kind of stuff. But it's just made me think. I don't know if I've got answers yet, but it's made me think a lot, because I've seen people's reactions to tragedy, and those who obviously years later are able to move on, and those who never do, and the quality of their life when they don't. Yeah.
Well, to that point, like I think, there's two different types, or not, there's several different types, but one aspect of suffering is when you put yourself under physical duress, right? A marathon is a good example of that. You're going to suffer. You're not going to be a bit uncomfortable. You will suffer. And then at the end of it, then you've completed a marathon. The completion is extraordinary. So it outweighs the suffering, but the suffering must come first. In an emotional sense, I tried to do this. I recently lost my mother. She only died a few weeks ago. And that's suffering at an extreme level, because I was very close to my mum. But instantly, even in the processing of slowly watching my mother die, it's like I'm already thinking, what have I got to get from this that is positive? I've got to take something from this. I'm suffering. That's paid that toll. I'm paying that toll. Where's my reward for this? I have to create the reward for that. Because I understand that my understanding in the relationship between suffering and success is very close. So even now, I look at the suffering that I've had to endure this year with my mum. I'm straight away looking, where's the payoff for this? Where's the yin and the yang? That's one part of it. I accept that. That's out of my control. What is in my control? To be positive, to be growth, to be forward. And that's spiritual. So I look at what can I learn from personally, internally, what growth, what belief might I have in the spiritual nature of things, in the universe. Open my mind even further to what I believe spiritually. One, I've had to suffer and endure during pretty chaotic work circumstances, chaotic just business, a lot of volume of work. And then, all right, well, how do I apply that to where am I going to get the positive gains from that? Because I've suffered, where's my trade-off? And I can't expect the universe to just go, oh, here you are, mate, here's $1 million. No, I understand that I've still got to work for it, but I'm only going to be able to work for it if I acknowledge it and then seek it out. So, you've got to, I'm very quick to growth mindset. When my father died, I was instantly like, the big epiphany I had there was, how do I be a better professional? How do I be good at what I do, but a better person whilst I'm doing it? And that was the application that I took from that. I looked at Dad when he passed and went, okay, wow, that was full on. That's a huge pivotal moment in my life. He's gone. The influence is gone. The mentorship is gone. What can I do from here? And I thought, I want to grow as a professional, but in a personal sense as a professional. Now with my mum passing, I'm not exactly sure what it is just yet. I know it will reveal itself, but I'm putting myself into places of growth. Emotionally, personally, spiritually, everything. I just push it into, and work as well. And one of those things, when my mum was sick with cancer, and she was in hospital for about she was in hospital for a couple of months, and I stayed with her for the last 4 or 5 days of her life. I stayed in the hospital, which is pretty grim. It's pretty full on. And I literally had to nurse my mother. And my brother was there and he was assisting me. He was unreal. But my mum passed away on a Thursday night, and by 5:30, she died at 11:45. At 5:30 the next day, I was on stage doing stand-up.
Wow.
In another state, alone with no family.
How did you do that?
Got to get it done, like you say.
Yeah.
You got to get it done. So I did shows in Adelaide. I had 3 shows in Adelaide for the Fringe Festival. I returned to Sydney to see my family for a few days. Then we flew to Melbourne for my mother's funeral service. And the next day I was on a plane back to Adelaide to go and do 3 more shows.
It's interesting, because there must be something in the fact that it's like assuming that was the worst moment of your life thus far, and then you're like making a whole crowd of people laugh. The juxtaposition between, and this is life, right? And from a spiritual perspective, there can be such darkness, but then there can be such light as well. And how, I don't know if the crowd would have had any idea that your mum had passed. Did. Oh, they did. Yet, like, you've made a whole room of people laugh. They go to bed not thinking of anything. And, it's your story, but assuming that you probably found it hard to go to sleep that night, it's those really, it's, but we can hold 2 emotions at once. That's what I've learned. You don't just need to, being sad doesn't mean that we can also not be happy about something else at the same time.
Correct. And it's just what I'm good at, and it's not through trying to be stoic or hard or anything like that. I'm just very, very good at compartmentalizing things.
Yeah.
And so I can be in one moment and then I can exchange very, very quickly. The way my brain works, and I've done all sorts of crazy psychometric testing and all sorts of stuff, which is weird because I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, but I think, most people believe I probably have it. Comedians always laugh when I talk about ADHD because they go, you are the poster boy for ADHD, but you're the only person who hasn't gone through diagnosis. I don't feel like I need to.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things to help myself, like meditation and exercise and all the right things. But I am able to very quickly compartmentalize, and very, very quickly I'm able to shift from brevity to levity. I'm able to move from one mental state, one emotional state, super rapidly.
That's pretty amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I harness it. So when I do something like that, so when I move from enormous grief into entertaining a crowd, what that does is it reinforces to myself consciously and subconsciously that I'm being my truest self, which is to be able to do that. I'm not being a false person. I'm not being a false Merrick. I'm being what I am and who I am. By doing that, that is my character. It is what I'm good at. It is who, it differentiates me from a lot of other people. Is that I suppose it's like a neuroplasticity. I'm able to move very, very quickly between those
very good.
mental and emotional states. So I don't feel like, I was in any way ignoring my mother's legacy or her impact or anything like that. It wounded me deeply and still does. But also, too, I know that I can park that and move on with the job. And I'll come to that in my time. But also, too, I think that with performing to a crowd, and I'm sure other comedians and many of my friends have lost parents, and then they go out and they perform, and it's never about money. It would never be about money. It wouldn't even be about adulation from an audience. It's not that. There is something about getting the job done, being in your safe space, being in your flow state.
The flow state's good.
You're being in your flow state, but also too, there's a wonderful and beautiful reciprocity there. There's an exchange between you and an audience where, particularly after my mother's service, when it was I think a lot of people in the public might have heard about it. People in the audience had maybe heard about it, and there was a sense of gratitude from them that I'd done the show, and it's a sense of gratitude for me that they came to the show. So there was a different connection when I did those shows to any other shows I've done before.
Isn't that nice? It's like you're being supported by people you don't even know.
It's an energy transference.
Yeah, and that's how the world works, really, isn't
It's all
it?
energy.
We're all, as Ramdas said, we're all here to walk each other home.
That's it.
And you do it the best through entertaining people. And they came to see your show, and that, is supporting you during a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, what do you think happens when we die? You said that you're spiritual and you've thought about this sort of thing.
I spoke to my mother about this literally on her deathbed. She was not religious. And I told her both while she was conscious and also too while she was unconscious. I told her several times in the hope that I'd be offering her some comfort. But I don't believe we ever leave. I think every person is interconnected. Everything, every molecule, every atom in the universe is connected. So I don't believe in the traditional heaven. I don't believe in the forms of an afterlife, because I think that the afterlife probably crosses over time and space. So therefore, you were never really here. You were never actually here, and you're also never in the future. You're never in the past. You were in all those things. So I know it sounds pretty weird.
No, I've heard these theories before.
Yeah. And people who are listening to me and, they hear me on radio or see me do, a TV show, they just go, who's this guy? What weird shit is he saying? But that's what I believe.
Yeah,
I believe that we are all interconnected. I believe it's all energy. We are all made of energy.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, quantum physics talks a lot about this. Yeah.
That's it. And entanglement, quantum entanglement. So when my mum passed, I believe that she would instantly have travelled through me, but she would have been travelling through me in her energy and what I believe the entire time. Before I was born, after I was born, after she's died, we're always there. So I take comfort from that. And I believe that there will be an understanding, either it might even happen whilst I'm alive, an understanding of how we fit into the universe and why we fit into the universe. And I think we're going to understand that we are just the tiniest speck in the most tiny of equations.
Yeah.
And so therefore and that gives me great comfort and great peace. And since my understanding and belief of those kind of higher spiritual thinking, it gives me great comfort. I have far less fear, far less concern.
I have been, just because of those people I know that passed away recently, I've been obviously interviewed a lot of near-death survivors and people who have big knowledge in this area.
And people who speak to people on the other side. I've heard of it. Yeah. It's fascinating.
But also, I've been revisiting old episodes of people that have come on and watching videos and stuff, really in the last week. And it's interesting that a lot of people, say exactly what you've just mentioned, but kind of talk about the fact that where we are now is actually the dream. And I was really thinking about that. And then what they say is whatever the next dimension is, that is almost home. And that then this is an illusion, which is so hard for us to comprehend. And I was really trying to comprehend, when you really just sit and think about that. And I was like, wow. But when you do, and you have a bit of a belief that could be true, doesn't it make you kind of go through life a lot lighter? Yeah. Where it's why do we take things so seriously?
Yeah, we worry too much.
Yeah. I want to tell you this beautiful story because it's always stuck with me. Oprah talked about one of her most, her message that one of her interviewees told her that stuck with her so much, that it was a mother who was talking about her son that died of AIDS a long time ago, and he was 12. And it was, his final moments, and she was lying in bed with him. And she could barely hear him, and she had her ear so close to his mouth. And he said, "Mum, it was all so simple, so simple." And then he passed away. And it's that idea of we make it so complicated when we're here. And, we hear about being in the moment and all this sort of stuff. But really, that is the beauty of life. Like, just being here, us having this conversation is beautiful. If you're moving through life constantly thinking about 40,000 things, never being present when you go to your kids' sporting activities or whatever they're doing, or when they're trying to talk to you, it's like you just miss everything.
Yeah.
And then the dream is over.
Yep. Yep. And I subscribe to that. I really do. I think we're in the dream state. Then, you can start the philosophical debate of whose dream are we in? Are we currently in my dream, or are we in your dream?
Yeah.
From my perspective, we're in my dream. I think there will be a grand awakening, and I think you either find that, this is what I find really interesting, the awakening of understanding of how we relate in the universe and just in existence. Maybe we find out when we pass over, when we die. Maybe we're just like, oh, it really is so simple.
Yeah.
It really was a dream or something like that. But what if we create artificial intelligence to the point where it becomes so aware, so intelligent, it answers that for us before we cross over?
That would be cool.
Would it?
Yeah.
It will definitely change things.
Yeah.
But if you've got an artificial intelligence that is so clever that it can literally manifest itself in another quantum, in another universe, it can travel through time and space and do all the things. It doesn't need a vessel. We all think we need a rocket ship. But what if we create an intelligence that is so smart, it can come back and just say, this is the meaning of life. But we'll be, for the first time, we'll be alive, and it will give us the answer. Yeah. I've just blown my own mind.
I mean, I just find this stuff so interesting, right?
But I genuinely don't think we're that far from finding it out.
No, I don't think so either. But I
think we'll find out in my lifetime.
Yeah. But I think, just being curious about this information is what makes your life so much richer. I mean, everyone to their own, but I still don't get it when people are like, nope, I don't know, we big bang and then we die,
Each to their own.
It's an interesting thing. But I do want to talk about Merrick and Rosso, which is because we haven't gotten on to that.
We're talking about quantum physics and entanglement, and then Merrick got weird, and I was just like, I just want to know, do you still talk to Rosso?
Because that's how people will know you. And I was
please do.
Thinking, this is probably one of the most different interviews he's ever done, but people do know you from the Merrick and Rosso days. It was funny again when I was doing research, thinking, I don't even think that's like not even how I remember you, but a lot of people will.
Yep.
And that was a big part of your life for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
You're kind of like the Hamish and Andy, the before Hamish and Andy, and Andy. And, you were talking before about kind of having these dark night of the souls after something happens. And that was a big... was it 12 years?
12 years that we worked together?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I think I read it was about 12 years.
Yeah, probably.
And then why did you end up finishing that show?
I think Rosso and I just come to an end where we had done everything. We'd done television, we'd done radio, we'd done podcasts, we had done every live show. We were really successful in all the things that we did together. We wrote a book. We'd done everything. The only thing that we hadn't done that we talked about was make a film. It was like literally the only thing. But, to make a film was actually not a huge desire for either of us anyway, because it's very difficult to make a film. And I don't think I think Rosso, probably you, I wouldn't have had the patience to continue with it. But we felt like we had done everything. Then, we were tired. We were tired. We were working really hard.
You were doing?
Breakfast radio, but we were doing television, we were doing live shows, we were doing all these things, but we're doing them at the same time. They were overlapping. So we were burning ourselves out. We were burnt out.
Yeah.
We were definitely burnt out. And
were you cranky?
Yeah.
Because I did breakfast radio producing for a year, and that was my dark night of the soul that flipped my whole life around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hours and the way you address your day-to-day and what time you wake up and how you do it is very, very important to have an effect, without doubt. Having said that, I wake up very early now anyway, So typically I wake up at about 4:30, which is almost
but
breakfast.
you don't go to work.
That's right.
It's very different.
No. So it's very different. But I think, and Rosso and I had Biff. We had a fracture there as well. So, we did have a parting of the ways, but it wasn't. It's out of all the theories about what happened to Merrick and Rosso, none of them are actually accurate. It's we weren't yelling at each other and hating each other. It was not like that either. It was just, I think we were both just cooked, and we'd done so much together, and we were not like other work relationships. We were more like brothers. And the relationship was much deeper, and this is what attracted a lot of, particularly in radio, what attracted people as listeners to our show was the fact that the overlapping between the personal and the professional was really nice. People really liked that. So, Rosso and I would do 5 days a week in radio, and then on Saturday we'd go to we'd have a barbecue together.
Really?
Oh, all the time. We'd go out drinking pretty much every weekend. We'd go out for drinks we had lots of mutual friends and friendship base. We'd hang out during the week. We might go and have beers on a Thursday. We'd just go and have drinks and hang out. So we'd go on holidays. It was mad. We lived in each other's pockets.
Wow.
It was not like a professional working relationship that then became a friendship. It was a friendship that just kind of molded into this professional relationship.
And then it just got a bit too much?
It was just too much. It just got too much.
Got a bit narky at each other.
Yeah, I think I think also too, we needed to have, in hindsight, very much so, we needed to have our own sense of individuality. Rosso and I are very different people, but we have the same sense of humour. So Rosso and I could, and this is the most wonderful thing, and we still have it. We still have it because we talk all the time. But if Rosso and I are in the same room, and this has happened recently, we're at the 50 years of Triple J reunion, and there's a whole lot of people, ex-work colleagues and people we know. If Rosso and I are in the same space, we will see the same thing, and without having to say a word, we will both know that both of us are thinking the same thing, and it's always something funny.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
We would know what the other person is thinking, so then all we would have to do, if we wanted to, for fun, we could say one word or say something funny, and it would trigger laughs from either of us. No one would have any idea what it was, but we would know. So it was like this inside world that only we shared. That's what was different about us. It's unreal. It still exists. So we'd see somebody and we could say something just like so small, like massive of sandals, and Rosso would know exactly what I was, and he would just laugh. And we have that, and we still have that, and we both still very, very much value that. It's awesome. It's an amazing thing, and you can't. I think in radio, particularly, people try to create something like that. They can't. It's either there or it's not. It's just whatever linkage there is between two people like that. It's really quite special and quite unique. But we are very different people, very different interest base. But we respect each other's interests. But we are quite different people.
Were you sad when that show finished?
Oh, gutted, absolutely gutted.
Because there's an identity that is enwrapped when you do something like that for so long, and also like you're put on a pedestal, right? And then suddenly it's not there anymore. And I've seen this with people just in high corporate positions even, right?
Yep.
And then they don't know what to do with themselves.
I think the biggest problem with men in general, and particularly later in life, and it leads to depression, and it leads to all sorts of problems. It can substance abuse or however it manifests. But it's identity crisis is the worst thing for men. And we associate our identity with our job or our profession, not with our actual true identity. That's where I've had a huge departure. I identified too much as being one thing associated with the job. The biggest transformation I had in my life was disassociating my worth and my purpose and my identity from what I did as to how I do it.
How do you do that? Because I know
how I do things is my identity. That's the how, not the what. The how I do it. So no matter what I do, if I do it in a way that is genuine to me, then that's okay. That's my identity, is me in those circumstances, which allows me to do all the different things I do, because I've disassociated being Merrick and Rosso. I disassociated myself from being a radio broadcaster, and then with time, I've managed to grow myself into all different types of areas, and people are quite surprised by that. But I'm always looking for the new thing. But the most common thing for me, generally, the thread for me, and this is, I reckon, what probably caused the dissolve between Rosso and I, is I wasn't growing. And for me, it's always about growth, always about growth, always about growth. I have to be growing. I have to be learning. I'm constantly curious. I don't have to be doing a million new things, but it's about growth. I always have to grow. So even when there's a death, I always instantly look, where's the growth?
That's so
where's the
good.
growth? Where's the growth?
And I think sometimes we can get stuck in things because we're comfortable, right? Comfortable, it's, paycheck, every month or whatever it is.
Comfort is death.
Exactly. And it's funny that you talk about that, because my producer and I were speaking about a similar thing before you came to the studio today. And I was saying, when I worked on Hamish and Andy, I was their exec producer for 4 years. And then after a while, granted, I wanted to grow my podcast and do other things, but a lot did come from the fact where I was like, well, I've kind of hit a ceiling here, and I'm not growing anymore. And as much as I love working in this environment because they're so funny and, it's a great team, I need to make the leap. And the leap was so great for me. But a lot of people don't do that because they're just comfortable.
Yeah, and the fear, it's the fear.
Yeah, it's the fear.
It always comes back to fear. And fear inhibits growth. So I'm not saying that I'm immune to fear. I say to people all the time, I'm always scared. I'm scared of everything. What I'm good at is just acknowledging the fear and then pushing through it. So there's things that I've done which are terrifying, like jumping out of a helicopter. Right? I was terrified when I've done it a couple of times. Weird that you have a life where you've jumped out of a helicopter more than once without any comfort at all. But in that moment, I'm terrified, but I have no hesitation. I know I'm terrified, and I go, the faster I move through the fear, the quicker I am on the other side. Now, I might end up in a position of discomfort and pain and agony and whatever else, but at least I'm past the fear stage. So as soon as I'm confronted with fear, I try to push through it as fast as I can.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because it doesn't bother me, but when I first started doing keynotes, right, I was terrified, as most people are. And I would be so happy when I was the first person up. I'd be like, just let me get it done so I can enjoy everyone else's keynote. I don't want to sit through everyone else's and have 1,000 thoughts going through my head and then be the last one to get up there. Because I agree, like when you're scared, just go out and do it. Get it over and done with. Be prepared, get it over and done with.
I'm always sort of like a cold pool of water, right? You got a pool, it's freezing cold water. You know it's cold water. The longer you stand on the outside, dipping your toe in, ooh, that's cold, thinking about how cold it is, that's the agony state.
Yeah.
The cold water is just the cold water. You're going to meet the cold water, so you may as well jump in. Don't stand at the edge. As soon as you see that's freezing cold water, straight in.
Yeah. It's like the mind doesn't have time to catch up.
The worst part of the suffering is the fear, is that suspension of your own fear in there. No thanks.
I wonder, because it did hit you hard when that show finished. How did you move past that?
Long process. Rosso and I have had periods where we wouldn't communicate for long periods of time, and then
was he just annoyed or something?
Oh no, I think also it's like anything. You've got to process things, and also we needed to both grow. I think we both needed to find these new versions of ourselves, because we were our whole identity was just that. And so I think we both needed to do it. So I think we needed space. And then, I think as we become more comfortable, and also too, with parenthood and being parents, both of us, then you sort of start to come back and you have more similarities, but in different ways. When my mother died, Rosso wrote me a beautiful letter, a card, and he sent part of a manuscript that he'd written from one of his books about the passing of his mother and his father.
Wow.
And he said he just tore the pages out of his book and sent them to me in a card.
That's so nice.
So, exactly. So, you can have a disconnection from time and, even physical meeting, but then he would still take the time to write me a card, to find something that had total meaning and knew that it would have really strong meaning to me, and then send it to me. So, there was a long period. There's been periods where we might not talk for a year, but then we'll come back and then we'll reconnect it. But now we talk a lot.
Yeah. And I wonder, how did you pick up the pieces just professionally, not with Rosso, but yourself, after doing that kind of hard work for so long, and then, you leave that show? What were you doing with yourself?
I was a bit lost. I don't mind. I reckon I was lost for a very long time, to be honest. I think that...
Was it the identity thing?
Yeah. Once I left radio, I wanted to leave radio in good shape. Like, I wanted to leave with happy memories of good experiences and relationships intact, which, not everyone gets to do in radio.
No, I know. It's brutal sometimes. I've watched the people come and go, and I see it's, being a producer on the other side and watching, it's hard.
Yeah, and people burn relationships and blow them up, blow up bridges and all that sort of stuff. I didn't want to do that. But I exited in a manner which is, almost unique, but was really good. It was really nice. So when I left radio, it was 20 years that I'd done it full time. And I just felt like I was living in a fishbowl. And again, I felt like I was enjoying what I was doing immensely, but I wasn't growing. And that's what I've come to realise now. If I'm restricted from growth and development, that's when I feel my worst. And then after that, I lost identity. So I didn't realise it at the time. For a few years there, I was just lost. And it was just like in a malaise. I just was really, and that eventually started to spiral down negatively. And I was like, the boiling of the frog. I didn't really realise what was happening as I was spiraling down slowly. And, small things like sleep patterns changed, diet changed, alcohol consumption increased. All of the kind of slow negative things that at the time I was like not really feeling or wasn't aware of, until the point where one day my wife took my kids to school and I was still in bed. And I said goodbye to my kids, and then I went back to bed and I went, "What are you doing, mate? What is this? This has got to stop." So I realised that, and I went, I'm going to set about to rebuild myself, because I won't allow myself to get any lower. And I was pretty low. And I was like, I'm definitely sliding into depression. There's no doubt about it. But I don't want it to get to a point where I can't arrest it. So instead I just went, I'm not going to let it get there. So I started to slowly climb back up the mountain.
What did you do?
I looked at self-improvement. That was it. It was just like, okay, and I looked at self-improvement and started breaking down, what do I need to do to get self-improvement? What have I got? What have I lost? And I think that my confidence was really knocked, really low, because I wasn't in my flow state enough. So I looked at my confidence and I thought, what could I do? And then, the universe provides opportunity for those who are open to it. And SAS Australia came along, and I thought, that's the thing. That's the thing that I will do, and that will restore my confidence. It was a bit of an all or nothing play. It's pretty risky when I think about it. It was pretty dumb, actually, to put so much weight into succeeding in it. But I thought, if I do, then I'll have a return of confidence. If I have my confidence, then I can grow, then I can build, then I can do more. So once I agreed to do the show and I started preparing myself for it physically, I also was very aware that I'd have to prepare myself mentally, and I'd have to change my mental state. So I employed things like, better standards of waking up and better physical standards, better mental standards. I was fit-ish, but not fit enough. Meditation.
What meditation do you do?
All of them. All of the time.
I mean, you're talking to like this number one big meditator here. I love meditation. What are some of your favourites?
I'd meditate 3 to 5 times a day minimum.
Yeah. How long for?
sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes longer.
Do you do, if you do a range, like are you doing guided? Are you doing...
I do guided.
Yeah.
I do guided. I also use frequency as well. I use different types of frequencies for different mindsets.
Yeah.
Which I find really good. I've only been experimenting with that for about a year, and I find that really good. I use different breathing techniques for different things. So when I go to do something, before I go and do something, I'll use specific breathing techniques before I go and do a thing.
Yeah.
To change my mindset, to trigger my next mode. So I can, again, compartmentalizing. I'll stop one thing, start another, and I can trigger those by breathing techniques. But I like all sorts of different types of meditation. Open eye meditation I really enjoy. I feel in certain spaces, particularly in nature, I feel incredibly connected to the universe when I do that. I feel like I can see things differently. I know that sounds we're talking about.
I get it because I went. I mean, it is an incredible place, but I've been to Soma a couple of times in Byron Bay, which is beautiful, and it's on these beautiful hectares of land.
Yep.
And I remember once just like having time alone there, and I was walking through nature on the grounds there, and I was like looking up and thinking, oh my God, I feel like I don't know what it's like to take acid. I feel like I'm on acid, even though I don't know what it's like. Like these trees are talking to me.
Yeah,
it was the most bizarre thing. It was like, you know how they say kind of in spirituality, and I find this sometimes if I have an engaged audience when I'm doing a talk, it's like I can feel them breathing at the same time as me. I can see we all become one in that moment, right?
Connection.
Exactly. And, at that moment in nature, it was like I was one. It sounds like someone who's taken a trip. I was one with the plants.
Yep.
It was awesome.
Yep. And
so I get it.
But that's what people, I think, hallucinogens, whether it be ayahuasca or LSD or whatever it is, they're just a cheat code to get through to the other side. I often look at those drugs as being a window that you can open to the other side of understanding, right? So the universe is out there. Imagine that, like, you're in a room and there is, on the other side is infinite space. Now, you can have a look through there by using your mind and meditative techniques. You can go to that ethereal plane, you go somewhere else, or you can cheat code it and take drugs. And the drugs just allow you to open up the window and go out there. But I think sometimes what happens is people open up the window with drugs and then they lean too far out of the window and then they fall out of the window and they don't come back.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful about how you peek through the window. But I 100% believe that. Sometimes when I meditate, and it's not all the time, but in nature and very specifically in certain places around trees, I will get into a state after a period of time where the shapes will change, and I see geometric shapes.
Yes,
which is
the first sign.
Which is the first sign of what people say when they do use drugs.
Well, geometric shapes is the first sign before we see sometimes another presence. So that is what I learned when, through teachers, that the geometric shapes is kind of when we've gone to that next level of vibration.
Yep.
And we're able to access another realm. You start seeing the geometric shapes.
Yep.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's amazing. Sometimes I can get it really, really clear. It's like a magic eye. For anybody who's listening, just go, you guys have got way weird. I thought that guy was funny. Why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? But to explain what it is, the best way I can explain it is, we all know magic eye puzzles.
Yes.
And you look at a magic eye puzzle and you just see squiggly lines and you can't see, and then all of a sudden your perspective shifts and then you go, oh, and it reveals a 3D picture in front of you. I believe meditation can take you to a similar state where if you were with open eye meditation, but I can also occasionally do it with closed eye meditation, is that I will focus on it and I relax, and once it goes, and then all of a sudden, bang, it shifts, and the trees and the leaves and the things around it become geometric shapes. And I see patterns in the geometric shapes, which at the time I was like, wow, that's a bit weird. Now from, a little bit of research and understanding like yourself, right? I understand that is actually, a significant form of people using the cheat code that is drugs, or it is from people who practice high levels of meditation. They can switch in and they can actually see formations of patterns or lines or geometric shapes within nature. And it is the first time you do it, it's a bit confronting. And then once you understand that there can be no harm and you will come back to the present state, that you're not going to stay in that bizarre twilight zone, it's very rewarding. It's amazing. I love it.
Have you accessed anything past that, been able to access anything past that? Because that's a pretty incredible state to get to.
I think when I get to those states, I feel like I bring something back with me.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm not going in there and getting a key. It's not as symbolic as that. I feel like it's more like, using the pool analogy again, if you jump in the pool, when you get out of the pool, you're wet. Right? You're still the same form, you're still the same person, but you've taken something from there. And I think that if you can go into that state and you come back, you'll just bring
like
something.
a knowing.
Yeah. But I've never come out of that state and just gone, oh my God, I've had an epiphany. You know what I need to do now? It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's just like the sense of, wow, that was very, very special.
No, I love that.
It's weird, isn't it?
Nah,
I feel sorry for anybody who's listened to Triple M and they're listening to this now just going, what? Who's kidnapped Merrick? Where is he? But this happens all the time.
I can't believe that you can actually access those states because it's very hard to do, right? So I've been on a few retreats where we've spoken about this a lot.
And you're guided with it.
And then we're guided into trying to actually get to those states, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, because almost like that's our hidden code in that retreat, that we're trying to access these full-on states. And I'll talk to people about them, but not often. And so I love that we're actually having this conversation because I love this stuff. This is my bread and butter, and I just find it so interesting. And I think that it's like amazing that you can access that state normally.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, like I said, I can't do it all the time. It's one of those things that it will appear, it will happen, but I can't do it if I'm stressed. I can't do it if I'm pressured for time. I need to just be very comfortable and very relaxed, and I can't always hold that state for longer periods of time. You kind of come in and out of the magic eye. But yeah, it's like I've never spoken about it. I've never told anybody that because everybody will think I'm insane. Everyone goes, isn't it? I mean, I knew he was weird, but now he's proper. He's proper insane.
Have you ever taken any of those drugs?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't.
Don't.
No, I don't want to. It's funny because I have nothing against them or people that take them at all, and I know in my realm there's a lot of people that do and advocate for them. So I'm not against that. But you know what, Merrick? I have accessed such amazing states through meditation that you're talking about, we're discussing now. I have no need. I know I can get there on my own, right? So I just feel like I don't want to do something that, as you said, might make me fall out a window. That just scares me a bit too much. And yeah.
Sometimes maybe people leave the window open or something like that. I could never, ever, ever do hallucinogenic drugs again. That's never going to happen. I can't even smoke weed. I don't do any drugs. I don't do anything. I just don't. So, and it's because it's not what I need. It's so counterproductive to me that the thought of it is horrific. I don't want that. Going into a meditative state and being in that place does not terrify me at all.
Yeah. I wonder, Merrick, what is some of the best advice that you've ever been given?
Definitely my mum's words about men who don't like women. Definitely. I think I take on a lot of people's advice if I respect them. Live with purpose is very important. And I've come to realise that more. I think live with purpose. Now, your purpose doesn't have to necessarily even be grand. It doesn't necessarily need to be unique. But just have something that you strive towards. And if you have purpose, then you will find getting into other aspects of your life, like flow state, and acceptance, self-acceptance will come from that if you can find your purpose. And even if you don't necessarily have to have the purpose right the first time. It'll just start the journey for
Yeah.
you. So I think that was a big thing for me is, find your purpose, find your reason. I don't understand exactly why I exist or my exact purpose, but I know broadly enough that I'm traveling in the right direction, and I'm comfortable with that.
Do you have a favourite prayer, saying, or mantra?
I have lots of them. Never stop, not stopping. And that's me. Never stop, not stopping. I say to my son, do a job, do it properly. Because although I'm a terrible student in the sense that I don't have a great scholastic career or background, but I prepare for everything. Everything I do, I prepare for, and very,
I
very
love
thoroughly.
that you even listened to episodes of the podcast before you came on.
Always prepare for everything.
Yeah.
What else? I don't know. I don't know. I've got lots of little things.
Do you say a prayer or anything every day? Like not even religious, but sometimes.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever shared this. So this is.
There's a first for everything.
When I started going through my transformation, which was to prepare for SAS Australia, I was working with a coach and still work with a coach, a guy called Andy Williams. You can seek him out. He's a former SAS soldier, and he's a coach. A brilliant guy, like super intelligent and transformative. And he took me from a state where I was at my lowest to where I am today. And helped me through that. But there was one thing that I got from that, which is when you said mantra, I do have one, which is when I was starting to break myself into pieces and really have a good hard look at myself and face uncomfortable truths and process them and then have acceptance. Through that process, I created what I called, I termed it myself, I don't call it anything, it's just termed it myself, as what I call my success matrix. So my success matrix, what I did is I looked at all of the things that I'd achieved that I thought were good or unique to me, like things that were a bit special, things that maybe other people couldn't do, things that I was very proud of in my life, and all sorts of different stuff across not just career, but just achievements. And I looked at them all, and then I wrote down next to each one of those things, what were the attributes that got me to that success? What was it? So I'd write down things like bravery, talent, and I started making this list. And next time I write 4 or 5 words against each one of these accomplishments. Then what I did is I started circling the words that kept on popping up the most, and I narrowed it down to about 6 or 7 words. And I went, I know this to be a truth. This cannot be denied by me or by anybody else. These things allowed me to make these achievements which are unique and are special to me. These are the attributes. So this is my truth. If I recite these words, which I do every single day of my life, if I recite this mantra in meditation or otherwise, then I know that to be true of me. And that's how I got through SAS Australia. I would just sit there and meditate on those words and
Really?
go through.
What are they?
Talented, confident, brave, determined, hardworking, resilient, successful.
Because it becomes your truth.
That's right.
It's you're rewiring your brain
Correct.
through neuroplasticity. You're saying that enough times, it becomes your reality.
But not even my subconscious nor my conscious can deny that.
Yeah.
It's a truth. I can't undo that because I've got these examples of where I've done those things. So if I stick to that, so in the quietest moments, I just recite that to myself.
That's beautiful. And our final question, what is a life of greatness to you?
Love. It's simplest and most common thing. Everything else I can be proven wrong on. I don't know the meaning of life. I don't know the meaning of the universe. I don't even know the meaning of myself. But if there was one thing, one space on the roulette table I had to put all my chips on, I just put it on love, and everything else will take care of it. Love between people, love between my family. That's it. Everything else, whatever.
I agree with you. Merrick Watts, this conversation has
been exhausting.
Blown my mind.
It's been
No,
exhausting.
it's gone to places that I've absolutely loved. Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you after 12 or so years again. It was really
Thank you.
amazing to have
Thank
this
you for inviting
conversation.
me on. Thank you.
Thank you.